Hi everyone, it's Denise from Denise Rich's Art and Design. This is a clock I picked up at the thrift store for $6.99 and it's made of metal. So originally I was planning to use it outside, but now that I've determined that it works, I have a place for it inside. First, I removed the labels and then I disassembled the clock face from the metal part, which was simple. It was just 4 little tabs that needed to be unbent. The metal has already been cleaned, so now I will give it a coat of Sloan chalk paint in the color Old White. There's something really satisfying about getting that first coat of paint on something. It just gives it a whole new look. And it's so relaxing not having to think. Just paint and don't think. So now the thinking part comes in. I wanted to get this raised area to stand out a little more, and I couldn't decide what color paint to use. I wanted there to be enough contrast, so I started with Fusion Chateau. Not as much contrast as I had hoped, but I continued on. Now to add a little bit more dimension, I'm going to go over the raised area parts of it with antique gold rub and buff. I'm not really a gold person, but I thought I'd give it a try. I thought it would be the easiest way to get some color onto these swirls and make them stand out more. I didn't film it, but I did go over the dry brushing one more time with another color. I used Cathedral Taupe by Fusion, and it was just a little bit darker than the Chateau, but you can barely even tell the difference. I want the inside edge and the outside edge of the metal to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to go over just those areas with Jolie Finishing Wax in the brown. And I was probably a little more timid here than I should have been with the wax. I think I could have gone on heavier or even used black and made it stand out more. And now it's time for the final sealing coat. I'm going to be using clear wax, and this is from Fusion. Once I reassemble the clock, then this project is all done. And here's a look at the finished piece. I really love that it has a two-tone effect still, but it's much more neutral. This is a medium-sized frame that I picked up at the thrift store, and I couldn't have paid more than $3 or $4 for it. But look at that gorgeous detail. I thought it was beautiful, and the interior canvas is very sturdy, almost like it's a piece of wood. I'm going to uncover these D-rings because I will wire it up at the end and use those, and I'll also be taking out all of the staples in the back. After cleaning the frame and the canvas, I will be using Fusion Mineral Paint in the color Algonquin. Just look how beautiful this frame looks after one coat of paint. I think it's just such a great transformation. This is the decoupage paper that I'm going to be using over the canvas, and I like how the different colors peek through the paper, so I wanted to kind of emulate a mottled effect in the background. So I'm going to be using 3 different colors. I'm going to be starting with Dixie Belle Drop Cloth, Fusion Chateau, and Waverly Mineral. And I'm trying to do kind of an ombre effect where it goes from lighter to darker. I'm just putting little blobs of paint in different areas from each color, and then at the end I will attempt to blend them a little bit. Here I'm using a skinnier little brush to get near the edges of the frame, just to avoid having to go back and retouch up the frame, which I do anyway. I'm taking a little makeup sponge and dampening it with my mister, and I'll use this to try to blend the colors together better. If you have ever tried to get the lids off of the Fusion paint, you know how difficult it is. I've tried the heat gun, which you have to rotate 30 times, and then I've also tried the plastic wrap I have on one of these. That doesn't really work either. What does work is just banging it really hard with something like the handle of this paintbrush. Try it, totally works. Anyway, once the paint dried on the center of this frame, I didn't really like the color. It just didn't really have enough contrast that would show through the paper, so I am going to try some different colors since I needed to do a second coat anyway. So now I'm going to be using a combination of Chateau and Algonquin by Fusion. Ah yes, this looks so much more like what I had envisioned. Now it's all dry, and I have touched up all of my little oopsies on the edges of the frame, and I'm going to cut down my paper to fit inside. I'm just going to do a tiny little cut where I want to trim the paper, and then I'm going to use my paper cutter to get a straight edge. You may be getting tired of seeing neutral paints from me, neutral everything, but I'm not reselling any of these items. These are just for my home, so that is why they are kind of all in the neutral category. Since I can't fit the length of this paper into my paper cutter, I am now moving to the straight edge and X-Acto knife method. I've already scored it a little bit while it was on the frame, and now I can just follow that line with the straight edge. I am going to glue this paper down with Mod Podge. It's the matte finish, and I'll just lay a strip of the glue at one end of the frame, adhere the paper, and then just continue down the frame doing small strips. So I'm trying to pick out a piece of dog hair that I see, and if you've seen my dog, you can see why there is so much dog hair everywhere. I'm constantly picking it out of paint. I have the paper all glued down, and now I'm going to use my brayer to try to get out any kind of air bubbles that might have gotten trapped in there. Since this frame won't have any glass over it, I am going to seal in the entire paper with another coat of Mod Podge. Now that the glue has dried, you can see the two-tone effect in the background of the paper. That's exactly how I wanted it. Now I'm going to be using some transfers from the Catharina Transfer book from IOD. I have never layered transfers before. I've just used like one transfer and laid it down, so I wasn't really sure how this was going to come out. So I went ahead and cut a whole bunch of them close to the edge of the transfer so that I had a better idea of how it would look, and I still wasn't sure actually, so I just got started. The ones I wanted in the background, I went ahead and laid down first. I just peel off the white protective backing, and I kind of used the words as a guide as to where it was when I had placed it down before. So now I'm just putting it in place, and I'll use the little burnishing stick that came with it and just start pressing it down with the stick. Transfers are really easy to use. You just hold on to the sheet at the top and work your way down and gently pull up. And if there's resistance, then it's still stuck to the paper. If there's no resistance, then it should peel up super easily. And then if something is still stuck to the paper and not adhered to your piece, just lay it back down and press some more. This little rosebud was going to get lost on top of one of the other transfers, so I went ahead and cut it off, and I will save that for later and find a good spot for it. Now I'm just going to take the backing and rub it all around the transfer just to make sure all the edges are adhered well. And now I added back in the little rosebud, and the transfers are complete. This was supposed to be the video where I show dry brushing the edges of the frame, but I think I hit stop instead of start. So I did miss that footage, but you can see in the bottom of the frame that big flat brush that I used. I discovered partway through, if I lay the brush very flat and just use the edge of the brush to hit the highlights of the detail, it worked really great for the dry brushing. You can see here how beautiful the frame looks with the details highlighted. I used Fusion Chateau paint for the highlights. Now I'm going to use Fusion Clear Wax to seal the entire piece. Simply brush on a generous coat and then use a lint-free cloth to wipe off all the excess. And the last step is to attach a hanging wire on the back, and I have some vinyl coated hanging wire and these little crimping sleeves that I will run the wire through, and then I'm going to use this great big blue tool to smush the little crimping sleeve tight against the wire. Here is the piece all completed, and I love it. It actually came out much better than I even expected. This is a metal piece of wall art I picked up at Goodwill for $2.25, and it was actually in really good condition. This is going to be a pretty easy thrift flip because I am just planning to change the color up a bit. So once I have removed all the labels and cleaned it up, I will give it a coat of Fusion Mineral Paint in the color Algonquin. Fusion Mineral Paint has a built-in top coat, so there was no need to wax it or put any kind of sealer on it, and one coat was really all I needed. I wanted to distress this piece a little bit on the raised portions, but I was afraid if I used sandpaper it would take it all the way back down to the original metal, and I didn't know what that would look like. I wanted the dark paint to come through that was underneath. So I went to the Fusion website and they said I could wet distress after letting it dry 30 minutes while it's still tacky, and then just using a wet cloth to remove the paint. So I did that for a little while and it became very tedious. So I was kind of over it, and then I decided to try the sandpaper. You can see here I almost completed the whole thing with the wet distress method, but I thought I would try the sandpaper just for comparison, and it worked so much better. It was much faster and basically had the same effect. And here is the finished metal panel. It's just a small change, but I think it looks great. Here are two of the projects alongside one I completed in a previous video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.